Awesome.
はい、今日ですね、メンバーシップサンデー、ね、今日私たちの教会ももうほぼ9年目になるんですかね、その中ですごく、ね、成長している過程にあると思います。
And so, yeah, today, as you know, it is our membership Sunday, talking about just what is it to be a member of this church, what is that like, and just as after being a church for about 9 years, we just have seen a lot of different growth and want to kind of consider this as an idea now.
ね、メンバーシップを導入するということはやはり、教会の、ね、人数も増えている、そしてある程度の形も出来上がってきているということでもあります。
And so there's a lot of different reasons why we're considering this idea now. I think a lot of just in recent years, we've seen a lot more people coming here and just growing in numbers, but also just in like the ways that we've been active in doing different things in ministry.
はい、なので、そのね、メンバーシップ、ね、教会の家という内容にあってですね、今日の聖書箇所を皆さんとシェアしたいと思います。
And so with that, we'd just like to look a little bit more about this idea of the house of the Lord, and so just looking at how that comes out in Scripture.
はい、じゃあヘブル書ですね、の10章19節から25節見ていきたいと思います。
So we will be looking today at Hebrews 10:19 through 25.
先週ヘブル書の11章見ましたよね。なので1章戻ります。
So last week we looked at Hebrews 11, so we're just going back one chapter this week.
はい、そしてね、この箇所じゃあ日本語だけで、ね、今日読みますので、英語の方は、こっちのスクリーンを見るか、また自分の聖書を開いてですね、一緒に見ていっていただければ嬉しいです。
And as always, we're going to be reading in Japanese only, so if you're an English speaker, you can either follow along on the screen or in your own Bible.
はい、こういうわけで兄弟たち、私たちはイエスの血によって大胆に聖所に入ることができます。イエスはご自身の肉体という垂れ幕を通して私たちのためにこの新しい生ける道を開いてくださいました。また私たちには神の家を治めるこの偉大な祭司がおられるのですから、心に血が振りかけられて邪悪な良心を清められ、体を清い水で洗われ、全く信仰を持って真心から神に近づこうではありませんか。約束してくださった約束してくださった方は真実な方ですから、私たちは動揺しないでしっかりと希望を告白し続けようではありませんか。また愛と善行を促すために互いに注意を払おうではありませんか。ある人たちの習慣に倣って、自分たちの集まりをやめたりせず、むしろ励まし合いましょう。その日が近づいていることが分かっているのですから、ますます励もうではありませんか。はい、今日3つのこと、教会のコミュニティとは何か、教会とはどのような存在であるべきかということを3つの内容を通してやります。
So today we want to talk about what are these three different things that are kind of about what is the church and what kind of community is the church.
はい、まず最初のポイントはですね、唯一無二の教会という、要はユニークな存在だということをまず話します。
And so the first point is that there is no other community like the church. It is unique.
はい、そして2番目、教会の性質、キャラクタリスティックですね。そういうこと、どういう教会で存在で、コミュニティであるべきかということです。
And then the second point is kind of the nature of the church community. What actually is it and what kind of characteristics does it have?
でそして3番目、どのようにそのような、コミュニティを生きる、ね、そこにコミットし、そしてそこで生きる力をもらえるのかということを話します。
And then the third point is how do we actually get the strength to actually live out this church community?
はい、まず最初、ね、19節、こういうわけでって、ね、いきなり始まってますよね。
Yeah, and so looking just at the beginning of the passage here, it starts off with therefore.
はい、こういうわけで私たちは聖所に入ることができますってわけわからないことを最初いきなり話します。
Yeah, it just starts right off the bat with just saying, therefore now we can enter into this holy place, like this holy of holy place.
この概念がなぜ教会コミュニティに関係あるんでしょうか。
And so why does this idea of like the holy place related to the church?
またこの概念がどのように新しい生き方なんでしょうか。今新しい生き方って、ね、20節で言ってますよね。
Yeah, it's saying like all these new things that we want to do now, but this is like an old idea. So how is this related to the church?
はい、聖所という場所はですね、神殿の中の一番奥にある神様がいる場所、神様の臨在、神様の存在がそこにまさしくある場所として知られてました。
And so everyone knew, especially in this time period, that the holy place, the Holy of Holies, was the place in the temple where God's presence was, and it was like this very holy place where only God was.
そして、1年に旧約聖書でですね、1年に1回ぐらいでしかですね、祭司という存在がその中に入って奉仕することしかできなかったです。1年に1回です。
Yeah, and actually in the Old Testament, it was so holy that only once a year the priest could go into this area to like do the different service that he needed to do.
要は旧約聖書では誰もそこにほぼ入れなかったんですね。神様との親密な関係を持てなかったんです。
Yeah, and so normally, just regular people, they could not go into this place, and no one could really have an intimate relationship with God.
でも新約聖書で私たちはイエス・キリストを通してイエス・キリストがそのような最高の祭司だということを通して私たち自身がそこに入れるようになる。神様との親密な関係を持てるようになるという概念です。
But then what this passage here is saying, especially in 19, is saying that because we have this great high priest Jesus, now anybody can actually go into this holy place.
なぜそういうシステムが必要だったんでしょうか。
And why is this system important? Why
も
do
ち
we
ろ
need
んね、
this?
私たちが罪人だからですよね。
Yeah, and maybe the obvious answer is like, well, we're sinners.
はい、このように考えてみてください。
So yeah, think about it like this as an example.
私たちはみんな人間罪を犯しています。
Yeah, so if all of us, all of humans are sinners.
罪を犯した結果、私たちが受ける悪い結果は何だと思いますか？
So what do you guys think is the penalty or the punishment for sin?
罪を犯したら何が起こるんでしょうか？
So what happens when we sin?
創世記で見てきましたよね。一番最初に私たちが影響を受けるエリアっていうのは人間関係なんです。
Yeah, and one of like the main areas that we saw come out, especially in the Genesis series, is that it really affects our human relationships amongst each
神
other.
様のとの関係から離れ、そして人間関係が壊れていくんです。
Yeah, because of sin, our relationship with God gets cut off and we get separated from God, but then also our kind of in between one another, our human relationships also get
アダ
broken
ム
off.
もアダムとエヴァも罪を犯して神様から隠れ、そしてお互いから隠れ始めました。
Yeah, so when Adam and Eve sinned, they were separated from God, but they also got separated from each other.
私たちがクリスチャンでない時の生き方っていうものはどんどん孤立していく生き方なんです。
And so the Christian or the person who is not a Christian and living apart from God, they're in a life living just becoming more and more isolated as time
も
goes
っ
on.
ともっと神様から離れて、そして人々からどんどん孤立していくっていうのが神様を知らない人たちの生き方です。
Yeah, the life of somebody who does not know God is someone that is continually getting further and further away from God and from others.
そして死に至る。死って何でしょうか？死ぬことって何でしょうか？
Yeah, and eventually it's something that leads to death. And what is that really?
死ぬことは神様から完全に切り離されること、そしてコミュニティ、人々から完全に切り離されて一人ぼっちになることが地獄そのものなんです。
Yeah, and it is this completely being cut off from God and others, just completely cut off in a way that is really like a kind of a hell of loneliness.
皆さん、地獄っていう概念はハッピーなものじゃないんですよ。
Yeah,
コミュニティっていうものじゃないんですよ。
Yeah, this idea of hell, it's not a happy place in any way, and there's no community there at all.
地獄っていうものは孤独です。
Yeah, it's complete isolation and loneliness.
要はクリスチャン、逆に言うとクリスチャンの生き方は神から離れていく、人々から離れていく生き方ではなくて、もっと神に入っていき、神に近づいていき、そして人々コミュニティに近づいていく生き方なんです。それが新しい生き方なんですよ。
So then the opposite of that, having this right living in relationship with God as a Christian, then that means you're continually drawing yourself closer and closer to God and to others as well.
要はクリスチャンとして孤立していく人たち、絶対いいサインじゃないです。
Yeah, so for somebody who is a Christian and claiming to be a Christian, but if they're living a lifestyle that is very isolated and always kind of getting more separate from other people, that's not a good sign.
なぜでしょ
So
うか？
why is that?
例えば箴言の18の1でこのように書いてあります。
And this is how it says it in Proverbs about why this is a bad thing.
自らを閉ざす者は自分の欲望のままに生き求め、すべての知性に反発する、仲違いするって書いてあります。
So this is how it says in Proverbs, it's 18 verse 1. It says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment.
牧師としてあるサインがあります。教会のメンバーの健康状態を見るとき。
Yeah, so for Pastor Yuta, as a pastor, there's a way to kind of tell as a sign for like the health of a church about
あ
this
れ
thing.
最近あいつ見ないなって思うときあります。
Yeah, so sometimes he'll think like, oh, well, I haven't seen this person in a while.
別に1回2回教会来なかったとかそういうことを言ってるわけじゃないです。もう継続的にどんどん来なくなっていく人たち、絶対いいサインじゃないんです。
Yeah, not just like, oh, they didn't come 1 week or two, but somebody who's like consistently not coming and hadn't seen them in a really long time, just very consistently, that's not a good sign.
もちろん仕事で忙しい時期、ね、家族の問題で忙しい時期、そういう時期はありますよ。
Yeah, of course, like there are like realistic things like just very busy with work or just family things going on, and it's just realistically there are things like
コ
that.
ロナで来れない時期。
Yeah, of course, like obviously now with
それは理
COVID
解
being
で
the
き
new
ます。
normal.
でもそれらを通してでも ほとんど来なくなる人たちは絶対いいサインじゃないんです。
Yeah, but in spite of all of those things, if there's still people who are like not even trying to come or not finding ways to get involved in some other way, like that's not a good sign.
ここで言っているようにクリスチャンの新しい生き方を生きることができてないサインです。
And so this is kind of like a sign, looking at this passage for like people who are not living well in this time.
じゃあ教会にただ来ればよいんでしょうか。
And so are we saying just like, oh, you have to just then physically come and be physically present at the church? Is that what we're
いや、
saying?
そういうわけではありません。25節にですね、集まることをやめちゃいけませんって言ってますよね。やめちゃいけません。
Yeah, and of course it says like in verse 25, like not neglecting to meet together.
はい、この集まる、英語で言うと meet っていうギリシャ語の言葉はエピシナゴーグっていう言葉です。
Yeah, so looking at the Greek of this word meeting together, it's episynagogue. It's like this. Yeah, this is the Greek
は
word.
い、まあ英語で言うとシナゴーグっていう要は街道のこと、ユダヤの教のですね、昔集まっていた街道のことを言うわけです。
Yeah, and it's referring to the kind of the synagogue back in Jewish times, like
はい、
the church
そ
in
の
that
シ
time.
ナゴーグっていう街道はですね、ただ皆さんここに来て先生のお話を聞いて、賛美して帰るっていうそういう場所じゃありませんでした。
Yeah, and it's not the synagogue in that time. It wasn't a place where you just kind of show up and passively listen to what the preacher is saying and like, oh, this is great, and you sing a song and then you go home. It's not that kind of place.
いや、そういう場所じゃなくて、説教されてもお互いに一緒にそうだよね、アーメンって同意し合って、そして教え合う場所だったわけです。
Yeah, it was more of a place of you're hearing what the person is teaching, but then you also are like agreeing and like, oh, like totally, that's really cool, and then like encouraging one another in what has been taught that day.
コンサートやイベントのように受け身の環境じゃなかったんです。
Yeah, it's not this environment of like going to a concert and just kind of enjoying it like entertainment passively.
英語で言うとそういうの何て言いますか、アグリゲーション、アグリゲートって言いますよね。ただ人数がポッて集まっている場所じゃないんですよ。
Yeah, it's not just this place where people just, oh, like all of a sudden we're all together now and we've aggregated kind of just spontaneously and not thinking about it. It's not like that.
教会はコングリゲーションです。という要は集ってお互い、この聖書箇所を見るとお互いにそうしなさい、そうし合いなさい。要はミューチュアルですよね。お互いに与え合う要素があるわけです。
Yeah, it's not just a random aggregation of people, but it is a very proactive congregation of people who come together to serve one another.
多くの教会のメンバーの人たちは、私たちの教会だけじゃないです。多くのクリスチャンの人たち、教会に来るイコールメッセージを聞くこと、教えられること、カウンセリングを受けること、全部受け身に考えてます。
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they often think about church as like a very passive thing, and they will come to it just to be taught, to be cared for, to kind of be encouraged, but they only think about it in this passive way.
いや、教会とは教え合う場所。
Yeah, but actually, the church is a place to kind of mutually teach and encourage one another,
カウンセリングし合う場所。
to counsel one another together,
ケアし愛し合う場所。
yeah, to care for one another.
お互いに励まし合う場所。
Yeah, it's a place of mutual encouragement.
全く違うんです。世の中のクラブやイベントとは。
Yeah, it's completely different if you compare it to any other kind of similar gathering of people.
受け身じゃなくて積極性がある場所で
Yeah,
す。
it's not a passive place, but a very proactive and active place.
オンライン礼拝じゃあダメなんです。言ってるの分かります。
Yeah, so really on a fundamental level, like even just online as a service is not really the full picture of what the church is.
もちろんこのような世界でそれはまあバンドエイド程度ですよ。はっきり言って。
Yeah, and of course, like especially in the time that we're living now, there are like realistic boundaries and stuff that we have to set.
絶対にオンラインで見てるからよしとしないでください。
Yeah, but don't think of it as like, oh, just always looking at it online, only joining online as a good thing. Like that, it's kind of can become a problem.
クリスチャンの生き方は個人主義じゃないんです。
Yeah, especially the Christian lifestyle. If you're just looking online at home all the time, it's this kind of private life, but that's not what the Christian life is.
神様の聖女、要は神様がいる場所に入るということは人々の中に入っていくということです。
So entering into this holy place of God, this holy of holies, that's also entering into community with other people.
神様は私たちは人々の中で成長し、神様を一緒に体験するように、そういうふうに成長できるようにデザインしてくれてるんです。
Yeah, it's because God has intentionally designed us to encourage and grow together in community.
ただ家で誰かの有名な説教者のポッドキャストを聞いて賛美 CD をポッて、 やって自分でハレルヤって歌ってるだけじゃ絶対成長できないんです。
Yeah, if you're just kind of listening to sermons on like a podcast and then just putting on your own like worship by yourself and only doing all of the church activities by yourself, it's not something that's going to help you actually grow.
教会は特別なユニークな場所です。
Yeah, so the church is a very special and unique place.
2番目、じゃあその教会とコミュニティというのはどのように機能するんでしょうか。どういう性質があるんでしょうか。
And so going into the second point, what is the actual nature of the church? How does it actually function?
はい、この今日読んだ聖書箇所23、24、22、23、24節で3回ですね、この著者、ヘブル書の著者は、英語で言うと Let us、ね、日本語で言うとこうしましょうっていう提案があります。3回繰り返されています。
Looking at the passage again for 22, 23, and 24, there are 3 different times where the author of Hebrews is saying, like, let us do this together.
はい、今2番目のポイントに入ってますよ。2番目、教会の性質、教会のネイチャーね。はい。その3つはこうです。まず22節、全く信仰を持って真心から神に近づきましょう。
So for the one in 22, the first one is like, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith.
信仰。そして23節、2番目はしっかりと希望を告白し続けようではありませんか。希望。
So the first one being faith, and then in 23 it says, let's hold fast to the confession of our hope. So hope is the second one.
そして24節、愛と善行を促すために互いに忠慈を払おうではありませんか。愛です。そう、faith, hope and love。愛。違います。ごめんなさいね。信仰。希望、そして愛です。
And then the third one, saying, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, is representing love. So faith, hope, and love.
この3つを見ていきます。
So we're going to look at these 3 things more in
はい、
detail.
信仰によって神に近づくってどういうことでしょうか。
So what is drawing near to God through faith? What is that?
信仰によるっていうのはもう神のパフォーマンスによって受け入れられてるから神に近づくっていうことです。
No, it's not trying to perform and to achieve being able to get near to God, but it's realizing that you're already accepted by God and then being allowed, like realizing you can draw near to Him because of
自
that.
分の正しさ、自分が正しいから神に近づけるんじゃなくて、イエス・キリストが正しいから、イエス・キリストに義があるから、それをもらっているから近づけるんです。
Yeah, it's not because we are right and we are justified, but it's because Jesus has already justified everything for us, and so we can draw near to Him because of that.
日本人はよくこういう傾向があります。日本人のクリスチャン。
I think especially for Japanese people, there's this kind of tendency.
しばらく教会に行っていないとですね、教会に戻りづらくなるクリスチャンいっぱいいます。
Yeah, especially for Christians, maybe for somebody who hasn't been going to church for a long time, and then they're thinking about maybe going back, it can actually be really difficult to go back to
変な
church.
ことを考える、例えばですね、久々に教会行ったら、なんかどこ行ってたのとか、大丈夫とか、なんか変な風に思われるかもしれないとか。
Yeah, and a lot of times they might think like, oh, but if I go back, then people are gonna like ask about where I was, like, oh, what were you doing? Like, are you okay? And then they don't want to be asked those things.
そんなこと聞かれたくないとか。
I don't want people to ask about that.
またある人は、自分は重荷なんじゃないかとか、わかります。自分の問題抱えて教会に来ると自分はなんか迷惑なんじゃないかなとか。
Or like, yeah, if I go back after such a long time, am I going to be like a burden to other people around me?
最近聖書読んでないから、最近なんかしっかりとクリスチャン人生を生きていないから、なんか教会行っても申し訳ないとか。
Yeah, so they kind of feel almost like sorry to go back because it's like, well, I don't want to burden other people with having to make them have to care about me coming back into the church or something like that.
皆さん、それは普通じゃない考え方です。
Yeah, but this is actually not a normal way to think about this.
考えてみて、子供がですよ、子供が家がある子供がですよ、テストで50点しか取らなかったから、帰りにね、今日家に帰れないって思うでしょうか。
Yeah, so for example, like think about a kid who's they didn't do very well on their test. They got like 50%. When they're on their way home, are they going to think like, yeah, I can't even go home anymore?
私はもうお母さんの子供じゃないと思うでしょうか。
Yeah, I'm not my mother's son anymore. I can't say that anymore.
もちろん私たちはね、後ろめたさやそういうものあります。親に怒られる、そういうのはあるかもしれません。
Yeah, I mean, of course you might be like scared and be like, oh, like they might get mad at me or something because I didn't do well on the
で
test.
も
Of course
子
you might
供
think
とい
that.
うアイデンティティ自体は揺るがされないですよね、絶対に。
Yeah, but like you wouldn't think like, oh, I'm not part of this family anymore just because I didn't do well on the test. It's not normal to think that.
小さい子供が親に対して自分は迷惑な存在だって思うでしょうか。いや、もっとずうずうしいですよ。
Yeah, I think actually the reverse of that, like kids aren't like, oh, am I bothering my parents or no? Like they're like, I'm always want to be attached and cling to my parents. They're like the opposite of that.
冷蔵庫のドアを開けるのに、お母様、ここにあるジュースを飲んでよろしいでしょうかみたいな、そんな態度になるでしょうか。
Yeah, it's more like always just wanting attention and like, oh, yeah, opening the fridge and be like, Mom, can I please drink this juice? Like always just wanting attention and wanting to be closer with your
うちの子
parents.
供がそんなこと聞いてたら、お前何やってるのって別に開ければいいじゃんってなりますよね。
Yeah, and so I think, yeah, I guess a lot of times the parents is like, yeah, it's fine, just like just drink it, like it's fine, you can just do it.
ね、ここで19節も大胆、19、20節書いてある大胆さを持ってるんです。私たち大胆に神の家に近づけるんです。
Yeah, and so it's saying, especially like in this passage, like we need to draw near to God with this kind of confidence that we can approach God like this.
私たちは自分のアイデンティティを忘れやすい人々です。要は僕こういうアイデンティティ記憶喪失症という僕呼んでいます。
Yeah, we often, we actually, we can say that we kind of like have identity amnesia where we're just so prone to forget who we really are.
すぐ忘れちゃうんです、自分
Yeah,
が。
we forget immediately, really.
そして他のところでアイデンティティを探そうとしてるんです。
Yeah, and then we just immediately switch over and try to find that identity somewhere else.
教会は家に帰ってくるようなものです。そして自分が本当に神様の家で誰なのかということを確認し合う、そういう環境なんです。
And so the church is this environment where we can really confirm to one another and encourage one another to remember this identity that we're so prone to forget.
はい、23節、希望、しっかりと希望を告白しようではありませんか。
And then looking at verse 23, it says, let us hold fast the confession of our hope.
どういうことでしょうか。
So what is this?
簡単に言うとこうです。私たちはアイデンティティだけじゃなくて優先順位、人生の優先順位、何が大切なのかということをすぐ忘れやすい人々でもあります。
Yeah, so it's not just forgetting our own identity, but we also are prone to forget kind of like the order of priorities in our lives of what's most important.
本当は重要じゃないものに私たちは希望を置いてしまいやすいんです。
Yeah, we're really prone to putting something that's not that important as the most important thing in our lives.
例えばここで昇進できなくてここで昇進できなくちゃ僕は幸せになれないとか、
Or like if I can't get promoted, then I just won't be able to be happy.
この大学に受からなくちゃ私は幸せになれない。
Yeah, if I can't get into this specific college, then I can't be happy.
彼女と結婚できなければ私は究極的に幸せになれない。
Yeah, like if I can't get married, if I can't be with that one person, then I can't be ultimately happy.
これほどお金稼がなければ。
Yeah, if I don't get enough skills or get enough money or any of these things.
もちろんそれらは重要なものですよ。
Yeah, of course, all of these things are important things that we can strive after.
でも重要すぎちゃいけないんですよ。
Yeah, but we can't make them too important.
そうですよね。結婚しなくても究極的にクリスチャンであるなら神様という存在、本当の幸せがあるわけです。
Yeah, for example, like if you're ultimately not able to get married, like at the end of the day, like you still have God and that is the most important thing.
教会というのはお互いに何やってるのって言えるようなそのような環境です。なんでそんなものに気がとらわれて、なんでそんなに心配しているの、お互いにそれを確認し合うことができる場所であるべきだと思います。
So I think that the church should really be this place where we can face one another and really encourage and challenge one another by saying like what are you doing there? It looks like you're really putting your hope in something more than God, and really we should be able to challenge each other in the church as this kind of environment.
永遠に続かないものに私たちが行ってしまうとき、優先順位を持っていってしまうとき、お互いに道を戻すことができる、そのような環境があるべきであるはずです。
Yeah, the church should really be this place to help one another and to encourage one another to get back on the right path, to not pursue after things that don't last forever, but to really encourage one another to put things back on this path to pursue God that is the only thing that lasts forever.
24節。
Looking at verse 24.
愛と善行を促すためにお互いに注意を払おうではありませんか。
And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works.
ここにちょっと時間を置きます。集中します。
And we're going to focus a little more on this third one.
私たちのこのコミュニティというのは愛によって私たち注意を払うって言い方をしています。ここで。
Yeah, so it uses this kind of language of like, let us stir up one another to love
はい。
and pay attention
愛。
to that.
要は先ほど言ったように受け身じゃなくて積極的に注意を払う姿勢が必要なんです。
Yeah, and so like we talked about earlier, it's not this passive like waiting for somebody to approach you, but rather being very proactive and trying to intentionally approach other people.
実践的にどういうことでしょうか。
And so practically, what does that look like?
今日皆さん教会来てます。
So all of you guys are here in church today, obviously.
ある人は 他の人の顔を見ずにすぐ帰る人もいます。
Yeah, I think there are people who, when it's over, they won't even like look at any other people and they'll just like bolt for the door and head home.
そうじゃなくて、周りを気にしてあげるってことです。
Yeah, so I think rather than that, it's after that, like wanting to then pay attention to other people around you and like seeing how people are doing.
あれ、今日ちょっとトレバー機嫌悪いのかな。
Like, oh, like Trevor, you look a little tired today. Like, I wonder how he's doing.
あれ、ちょっと今日あの人髪ボサボサ。まあそこでなくていいですよ。
Oh, like that person, like their hair looks a little like messed up. Like, I wonder if they're like busy or
ちょ
fretting
っと
or
あの人
something.
落ち込んでるんじゃないの？
Is that person like, are they okay? Like, they look a little like they're depressed or something.
数週間前、僕涙ぐんで目が腫れてて、ここで説教してたんですね。
So a few weeks ago, Pastor Duta, his eyes were kind of puffy and like a little bit like watery and stuff when he was preaching.
そしたらデビーが来てですね、リュータ超疲れてるように見えるけども大丈夫って聞いてくれました。
Yeah, and Debbie came up and said like, oh, Duta, like you don't look so good. Like, are you tired? Like, I'm wondering if you're okay.
でまだ他の方もですね、最近僕の師匠がね亡くなってしまって、そういう情報を聞いてたので、リュウタさん涙ぐんでますけども大丈夫ですかって聞いてくれたんですね。
Yeah, and it's actually around the same time that Rita's mentor passed away, and so it was actually she thought like, well, he does have a little bit of like kind of teary eyes, so maybe it's like related to that. Maybe it's been a hard time for
で
him.
も僕の答えはいや花粉症ですってそれだけでした。
But actually, he just had hay fever. It was the only
でもね
thing.
嬉しかったんですよ。
But yeah, it just felt like very happy to be asked about something like that.
牧師として僕のある意味牧会の役割はみんながどうか確認する。だから僕が積極的に最近どうですか、最近仕事どう、元気とか聞きますよね。
And of course, like as a pastor, it's like very natural for that to be like his job to be very proactive and asking everybody how they're doing. That's like kind of his job in a sense as a pastor.
でもほとんど 90% の場合絶対リュウタさんはって返してはくれません、ほとんど。
Yeah, but actually, like 90% of the time, a lot of people don't then ask him like, "Oh, what about you? How are you doing?"
別にそうしてくださいって僕今お願いするためのメッセージじゃないですよ。
It's not a message for saying like, "Oh, please start doing that right now." That's not the point of the message. But
僕はそれでも大丈夫です。でもね、皆さんに励ましたいのはお互いにそうしたらどうでしょうか。
yeah, but the point is to kind of say like, do we also do that? Do we kind of just wait for people to come ask us how we're doing? But do we also take that initiative to others?
他の人の状態、皆さん分かってますか？
Yeah, do you guys know how other people in the church are doing?
注意を払って聞いたりケアしたりしてますか？
Yeah, are you able to pay attention to others and to really care for them and see how they're doing?
最近どうって聞いて、はいじゃあねってじゃなくて最近どうって聞いてあげてね、実はってなった時にちゃんと聞いてあげてますか？
Yeah, are you just kind of like, oh, like how's it going? Fine, like just not actually having a real conversation, but are you able to ask how you're actually doing to have people say like, well, actually, like I'm not, and actually, are you able to have those kind of conversations?
それこそが集まるって概念なんです、ここで。
And so that specifically, that's the idea of gathering together and congregating together as a church.
プロアクティブにケアし合う。
And it's proactively caring for one another.
どうすればそのような愛を表現できるんでしょうか？
And how do we actually express and represent this love?
3つの言葉がここで使われています。
There are three different words that kind of represent this.
まず最初、促すかな？促すですね。はい、促すっていう言葉が使われてますよね。どこだ？促す。促す24節ですね。書いてありますね。はい。
And then the first one's in 24 where it says how to stir up.
はい、促す。これね、皆さんショック受けます。面白い言葉です。
Yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting word if we look at more of the original word.
この意味はギリシャ語で挑発する、イライラさせるっていう言葉です。
Yeah, it's almost like to provoke or irritate somebody, kind of like challenge them almost.
ある人は私いつも教会でイライラしてるわ、説教で挑発されてるわって思うかもしれません。この教会それが得意っていう人たちいるかもしれません。
Like maybe there's people that already feel that way just from hearing the message. I don't know, but
いつも挑発されてるってね。I'm always provoked by the church people here.
yeah, maybe there's just in general like coming to this church, you already feel that way, kind of in a negative way.
でも重要なことですこれは。
Yeah, but this is actually like a very important thing.
どういうことでしょうか？お互いを挑発するっていうことは。
Yeah, what does it actually mean to stir up and to provoke one another?
自分と違う意見を持った人でも正直に 発言し合い、お互いを磨き合うってことです。
Yeah, and it's being able to, even with people who you don't have the same opinion, to actually be able to say what you think and to actually have a good conversation and like that kind of stirring up and actually sharing different opinions about
愛を持
things.
って真実を言える関係です。
And it's above that, having this relationship where you can actually speak the truth to one another.
何か間違ったさっきの言った通りに何か間違ったところにアイデンティティを置いている優先順位に向かっているときにただ祈ってるわだけじゃなくていやそれ違うでしょってしっかり言えるそのようにプロボーク挑発できるっていうことです。
Yeah, and especially for back we were talking earlier for when people are putting their identity in something else that's not God or making their order of priorities, getting that messed up and putting more important things first. It's being able to call people out and to say like, hey, like, oh, like I'll just pray for you. It's not like that, but saying, oh, I'm actually going to like challenge you and say like, hey, like I think that's wrong. I think this would be more of like the truth and speaking that to
教
people.
会内での衝突、不一致、当たり前だと思ってください。
Yeah, so start to think that it's actually more normal and more obvious to have kind of conflicts within the church. That's actually a normal
日
thing.
本人よくあります。一番最初の喧嘩ですぐいなくなる人。
Yeah, I think especially in Japan, it's often common to have like any kind of small conflict, and then from there the person just immediately like leaves and you never see them again.
連絡も取れない人。
Yeah, like they just won't contact you anymore at all after having a small like bump or any kind of small.
正直言います。それ失礼です。
Yeah, so in a sense, it's actually kind of rude to do that.
そうですよね。もう意図的に関係を切っているわけだから。
Yeah, like they're just intentionally like, oh, I had one small like weird thing with that person. I'm just gonna cut it off completely. That's
いや
kind of
ま
rude.
さしくそれこそが成長のきっかけじゃないですか。
Yeah, but isn't that like exactly what doesn't help us grow if we're cutting it off like that?
それこそが信仰を表す要は人を許すことができる福音の力が現れる状況じゃないですか。
Yeah, isn't that kind of not exactly this kind of the situation where we want to continue to stir up one another and encourage one another? It's exactly the opposite of that.
It's a chance to grow in the gospel ね。
Yes, a chance. Sorry, it's a chance to do that instead of just cutting off.
そのような友達がいますか。
Yes, do you have friends like that where you can they're actually like a challenge to you that you can
周
grow?
りに本当のことを言ってくれる友達いますか。
Yeah, are there people around you who can actually speak the truth to you?
はい、でもそれだけじゃダメです。もう一つの言葉、励ますっていう言葉が使われています。
Yeah, but it's not just that. There's also this word of encouragement.
はい、この言葉はパラカレオっていう言葉です。
And this comes from the Greek word parakaleo.
はい、寄り添うっていう言葉です。
Yeah, and it's like drawing near to somebody and like being next to them.
はい、その人をケアするっていうことは、お前こっちこれが正しい、お前何間違ってることやってるね、それだけじゃダメです。一緒に隣に来て正しい方向に行こうよって歩んであげる人です。
And so this stir up and like calling somebody out of things, it's not just saying like, oh, like, hey, you're wrong. This is how you need to go. You need to go over there now. It's coming alongside somebody and going there with them.
僕はイライラさせ他の人を挑発しイライラすること得意です。
Yeah, I guess Pastor Yuta is good at provoking and irritating and stirring up people, the first one.
パティは励ますことのが得意です。
And Patty is actually really good at the second one of encouraging people
励
and
ます
coming
ということは
alongside them.
実践的にです。実践的にその人が正しい方向に向かって歩んでいけるように実践的にプラクティカルに助けてあげることです。
Yes, and especially this one, like it's a very practical thing where you have to come along somebody and think of like what's an actual practical thing that I can go along with you and like move towards too.
皆さん、周りの人にどのように実践的に助けるできるかどうか、教会に来たときちゃんと考えていますか。
Yes, are you guys thinking about when you come to church, like what are ways that I can come along the people around me and actually practically walk with them?
例えばうちの教会はですね、カウンセリングに長けてるって言ってましたよね。
Yeah, and so as you guys know, our church is also kind of involved in doing counseling.
だから例えばすごくもう精神的にダメージを受け苦しんでいる人がいれば、カウンセリングを紹介します。実践的に。
Yeah, so as like an example of a very practical thing, if there are people who are really just struggling with mental health or other different things, like we can kind of practically help with counseling.
5回までそのカウンセリング無料で提供します。1回3000円ぐらいかかる、そのカウンセラーがいるんですけども、それを5回まで私たち提供します。
Yeah, and we're offering just right now as counseling up to just 5 times. One session is normally 3,000 yen, but we're offering up to 5 times for anybody who needs it for free.
そういう人たちを実践的に助けたいからです。
And it's because we really want to practically help these people.
でも教会通してだけじゃなく個人レベルでどうでしょうか。
Yeah, but it's not this idea of practically helping, it's not just a church thing, but what about on the individual level?
例えばある人が病気だったとしましょ
Yeah, so for example, like what if somebody is sick
う。病院が見つからない。
and they can't find a hospital?
探してあげてはどうでしょうか。
Yeah, so what about like helping them find a place to go?
コロナにかかってしまった。
Yeah, or somebody who catches COVID.
スーパーにも自分で足でね、買い物に行けない。買い物してあげてはどうでしょうか。
Yeah, like they're obviously not going to be able to go buy groceries anymore, but like what about helping them out with that?
要は私たちは愛と善行、要はみんながお互いにそのようにできるように常に励まし合うことなんです。
And so the church, this community is supposed to be a place where we can continue to encourage and stir up one another with these
あなたの
loving
ス
good
キル
works.
をここに使ったらどうですか。
And so thinking about just like what can you do? What is the skill that you have? How can you use that to bless other people?
あなたの賜物この分野でありますよね。このミニストリーで使えたらどうですか。これをやったらどうですか。そういうことを常に励ましてあげる存在であるべきだと思います。
And what gifts do you have? What are ways that you can take those gifts that you have and use them to bless others in the church?
どうでしょう。
So yeah, how about like can we consider like doing these things more?
難しいですよね、これね。
Yeah, it's kind of hard though to just say like, oh, just do it now.
僕も疲れてる時、今日あんまり人と話せずにちょっとね、家でプレステ5やりたいなとか思いますよ。
Yeah, I think even like as Pastor Yuto, especially like when he's tired, he's just gonna be like, oh, I don't like want to talk to people. I just want to go home and play PlayStation 5 or
そう
something.
いう時もあります。
Yeah, of course, like there are those times we all get tired.
でもそういうところでも正直になってもいいかもしれません。
Yeah, and I think it's actually maybe even better to be honest with ourselves in those times.
そこで励まし合ってもいいかもしれません。
Yeah, and those are the times maybe specifically where we need more encouragement.
お互いのニーズを把握してますか、皆さん。
Yeah, do we really have a good grasp mutually of each other's needs?
どうやったらそんなコミュニティ生きれるんでしょうか。どうやったらそんな教会を立て上げ、そしてコミットできるようになると思います。
And so what do you guys think? Like, how can we actually, rather than just saying like, okay, now just do it, like, how do we actually get that source of strength to live this out?
3番目、最後のポイントです。
And that's the third point.
どこから力の源、力が得られるか。はい、19節に戻ります。
So we're going to go back to verse 19.
先ほど言ったように、だからこうできますよね、こうしますよねっていう、だからって言ってますよね。
Yeah, and it starts off saying like, therefore, this is why we have this, and then let's do this.
2つ言ってます。そこで、そのだからの理由。
So it says there's two kind of reasons why it says therefore.
まず最初、あなた方には、英語で言うと confidence、自信があるからって言ってます。
Yeah, so the first one is saying that there is this kind of this confidence that we have.
何の自信なんでしょうか。
And what is this confidence? What is it in?
そのような自信がどうやってコミュニティに入ることを助けてくれるんでしょうか。
Like, how can we actually have confidence in going and like really proactively going into the church?
このように考えてみてほしいと思います。
Yeah, so think about it like this.
私たち人間は先ほど言いましたよね。神様から離れてどんどん孤立していってる、孤独になっていってるって言いましたよね。
Yeah, so earlier we said that we're kind of all prone to, especially with sin, like to get more and more separated from God and from others.
その反面、必死にどこかに属そうと、戻ろうと、関係に戻ろうとするっていうのが人間です。
Yeah, and humans are also in that time where we're also just very prone to always look for some kind of group to belong to.
例えば皆さん4月大学入試終わってね、大学に受かって安心してますよね。
Yeah, and for example, like it's April right now, like school just started for people who have like gotten into a school and they're finally like, oh, I got into the school. Like
皆
that's
さん
something.
一生懸命大学受験したと思います。
Yeah, I think for all those people, like they've probably tried really hard with the entrance exams and all of the like stuff you have to do to get into college.
大学に行く理由なんですか。
And so, yeah, like what is like the kind of like the reason or why you're trying to get into college like that?
もちろん例えばある専門分野を勉強したい、スキルを身につけたい、そういうのはあると思います。
Yeah, and of course, like there might be the more like obvious thing, like, well, I want to study this specific thing. I want to like, yeah, specialize in this or get this kind of skill.
でも本当の理由はそうじゃないんです。
Yeah, I think for a lot of people though, like the real reason is different.
大学に入ってそのようなスキルを身につけすることで、ある特定の仲間や階級、サークル、特定のグループを求めてるんです。
Yeah, and I think more than just wanting to get the skill itself, it's like they're yearning for this kind of, I want to be part of this inner circle of other people who have that skill and be a part of this like special group that has
例え
that.
ば東大行ったとしましょう。
Yeah, so for example, somebody who went to Todai University.
東大という環境に入ってそこの一員になることである意味アイデンティティが確立できるわけですね。私は東大を出てる素晴らしい人間だ。 言えるわけですよね。
Yeah, for people who-
頭がいいって。
Yeah, for people who can just like get into Todai, they already have this kind of sense of like new identity of like I am a Todai student now that I've got.
さらにその東大の出てるということが素晴らしい企業に入れる
Yeah,
きっかけにもなるわけです。
And now that I'm a Todai student, I can get into like the best organizations and enterprises after I graduate.
要はもっともっとスペシャルな特別なサークルに入っていけるんです。
And I can get into more and more like exclusive and higher up circles and get like really, really connected with these awesome people that are really
な
hard
ん
to
で
connect
昇
with.
進するんでしょうか。もちろん給料増える、それもあると思います。
Yeah, or like why do we try to like get promoted and do that? Of course, like you get paid more, but what besides that?
でもお金が究極的じゃないです。本当はですね、やはりその重要な役員たちの仲間になる。例えば素晴らしいプロジェクトに関わる、そのサークルの一員になる。そこにやはり私たちはアイデンティティというものを求めているんです。
Yeah, and people are, it's not just that they want to get paid more, but they want this identity of like, I want to be part of these like higher ups and be partners with these people who get to decide all these special projects. I want to be like partners with them and I want to be one of them and have that identity.
皆さん、ファースト&フューリアス、ワイルドスピードって映画知ってますか？
Yeah, I think everybody knows Fast and Furious.
彼らは素晴らしい能力を持って素晴らしいミッション、世界を救うミッションをやってますよね。
Yeah, they're always like on these crazy missions and trying to like save the world, I guess, and yeah, doing all these crazy missions together.
でもミッションをすることや、わかります？素晴らしいスキルを、パフォーマンスを見せることが映画の醍醐味でしょうか、あれ。
Yeah, but is like the point of the movie to like have somebody show how great their skills are and achieve and like finish the mission? Is that the point of the movie?
違いますよね。必ずですね、オチはこうです。ビン・ディーゼルが最後に We are family 俺たちは家族だって、それで終わりますよね。
Yeah, the movie actually always ends with like Vin Diesel saying like, "Oh, we're not friends. Like I don't have friends. I have family." And that's like the important part of the movie, not like we did it.
アベンジャーズもそうです。世界を救って、ね、いる仲間、ね、でもナターシャ、ブラックウィドウは、ね、孤独で生きてたのに友達をそこで見つけられた仲間なんだって、そこに戻りたくて必死に生きてたわけですよね。
Yeah, or if you think about like Avengers, like it starts off, they all have their own individual movies and they all start off separately, but then like especially like Natasha Romanoff, she's like very isolated, but then she comes together and she's like, oh, I like this is my family now, these are my friends, and she's trying to keep them all together and they all come together for this one purpose.
私たちが本当の意味でお互いにのために自分を犠牲にして生きれる、その原動力はすでに受け入れられているっていう状態を持っているからです。
Yeah, and so this, in a similar way, like this kind of original source of strength that we have to be able to live out what we were saying earlier is that we know that we are completely accepted already by God.
で
And
も
by
私た
others.
ちクリスチャンは最高の内側のサークルに入れられているんです。それなんですか？三位一体の神のサークルです。
Yeah, and in a sense, we could say that as Christians, we are already in like the top circle, the most exclusive club already, and that is God Himself in the Trinity.
でもそのサークルに入れられている理由は私たちがすごいからじゃないです。
Yeah, but being able to be in that top exclusive circle, being with God, it's not because we were awesome.
素晴らしい空からサンダーを雷を下ろすような特別能力を持っているからじゃないです。違います。イエス・キリストの犠牲があるからです。彼のパフォーマンスがあるからです。
Yeah, it's not because we were so great and we achieved it, but it's because of Jesus and His sacrifice and what He accomplished for us.
さっき言いました、私たちの神を知らない人生は孤独、孤独、孤独、そして地獄です。
Yeah, and earlier we said like for somebody who doesn't know God, they're continually getting more and more isolated, and it's leading to ultimately to hell.
でもイエス・キリストは十字架でどうなりましたか？
Yeah, but then what did Jesus do on the cross?
私たちのために完全に神に見捨てられた、要は切り離された孤独になったんです。
Yeah, He actually in our place became completely cut off from God and completely isolated from
20
Him.
節に垂れ幕っていう表現があります。何なんでしょうか？
And so it says in verse 20.
20, this the veil, or what do you say?
Oh, it says that the curtain has been kind of opened. And so what does this mean?
聖女の目の前にはカーテン、誰も入れない、要は祭司しか入れないようにカーテンが敷かれていました。
And so this was back in the temple in the holies of holies. There was this big curtain or this big veil that was completely like blocking anybody from going in.
でもイエス・キリストが十字架で死んだ時にそのカーテン、神殿にあるカーテン、垂れ幕が引き裂かれたんです。
Yeah, and actually the time when Jesus died on the cross, this curtain in the temple actually just ripped from top to bottom.
どういう意味でしょうか？
And so what does that represent?
要は神様に近づく隔たり、神様との関係、それだけじゃなくてお互いです。お互いとの関係の隔たりが取り去られたんです。
Yeah, and it's to represent that through Jesus, that complete separation from God that we had before in our sin was completely done away with, and now we can approach God very directly.
絶望的に孤独な私たちの代わりにイエス・キリストが地獄、要は本当の孤独を味わってくれたからです。体験してくれたからです。
Yeah, and it's because Jesus in our place experienced and underwent the complete isolation and separation from God that we deserved.
そして代わりに私たちが神に受け入れられる、要はエデン、神のいる場所、神が本当に存在、そして体験し変えられる場所に戻っていけるためです。
Yeah, and then it was also so that we could go back into this relationship, almost like back to Eden, back into this perfect relationship with God.
なんで皆さん教会早く帰ると思います？自分。
And so, yeah, for all of us, like, why do we come to church? Like, why are we all here today?
No, why do you go back from church quickly? Try to
going back home. Oh, sorry, thanks. Yeah.
考えたことあります？
Yeah, so have you guys thought about like what makes you want to, just quickly go
なん
home
で
after
避
it's
けよ
over?
うとするんでしょうか？
Yeah, so why do we try to kind of avoid others right when church is over?
ある人はこうだと思います。
I think some people might be like this.
傷つけられるのが怖い。
They may be afraid of being hurt by others.
もう傷つけ何度も拒否られて傷つけられて、ここでまた正直になったり自分をさらけ出すことでまた傷つくのが怖い。
Yeah, I'm afraid of like I've always like tried to open up, but then I'm always hurt, and so like I just don't want to like have to deal with that and like being exposed, and I don't want to be hurt. So
でもそのもう心配がなかったらどうでしょうか？
Yeah, but if there wasn't a fear of that happening, then what would we do?
もう絶対拒絶されない環境、教会のこと言ってるわけじゃないですよ。神様のサークルです。
Yeah.
そこにいる自覚があったらどうでしょうか？
Yeah, if we really made the church into this place where we didn't reject others and there was no fear of that rejection, like how would we change and grow as a church?
たかが教会の誰かのメンバーに傷つけられても別に神様に受け入れられてるからあまりダメージ受けなくなるわけですよ。
Yeah, and even thinking about like, well, what if like we really had that confidence just in God? Like even if we were hurt by somebody, then we know like, well, ultimately I do have that complete acceptance and affection from God, so it's okay.
ある人は逆です。必死に仕えて必死に自分を犠牲にしてまで認められようとして頑張ってる人たちもいるかもしれません。なんでそうなってるんでしょうか？
Yeah, but there also in the flip side, there might be people who are like really engaging in church and like serving in so many ways and trying to like be accepted by how much they serve and engage in church. And so what's going on with
それ
that?
らを通して自分が受け入れられるって必死な人。
Yeah, but in a sense, that's also this kind of desperately desiring to be accepted, but just on the flip side. But
そして思い通りにうまく用いられなかったり、またミニストリーでうまくいかなかった時に激怒する人。
yeah, but then it's also like people who are like they're so invested in trying to get accepted by investing in all of these things that when they don't get the acceptance they want from those things, then they will kind of turn rageful and like get really upset.
なんで怒るんでしょうか？
And what makes them upset? Like why do people get upset with
自
that?
分のパフォーマンスでまだアイデンティティ属そうとしてるからで
And
す。
it's because they're trying to still put their identity in their performance and in what they can do.
でもそこでもうすでに受け入れられてる、すでに愛されてる。神によってその自覚があるなら別に思い通りに浮かなくても反応しなくてよくなるわけです。
And so for those people, if you can really have this confidence knowing that you're completely accepted by God already, then when things don't go the way you thought in ministry, then you can still it's like okay to not react anymore because you know like, oh, it's okay if it doesn't go that way because I'm still accepted by God.
うちの教会まだこのようなコミュニティになってないです。
I think our communities as a church now, we're not fully there yet as that kind of community.
何人かの人たちはそのように生きていると僕感じます。
Yeah, I think like just there might be a lot of people just here in the church who are still kind of living and struggling in these different ways.
の何人かの人は already living like that. Yes, I can see that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
But not everyone.
Yeah, but we're not all quite there yet in terms of like living this way.
どうかこのようなコミュニティにしていきましょうよ。
Yeah, so let's really together mutually try to encourage one another and try to live in this way as a church.
愛し合う、励まし合う、ケアし合うコミュニティにしていきましょうよ。
Yeah, let's really try to be a church that is caring for one another, encouraging one another, and loving one another
メンバーシ
proactively.
ップはそのための決意であり、コミットです。
Yeah, so membership is a decision to be able to do those things even more.
これらを生きたいって思いの表れです。
Yeah, so this is this is kind of representation what we're saying today of wanting to do that, wanting to be more this kind of church.
一緒に祈っていきましょう。
Let's pray